Goddamn, it is hot. Alright, so before I begin, I want to ask a simple question. What makes a story pretty unique? Well, viewers, that's what today's video discussion is going to be about. We're going to be talking about the perfect love story. Let's begin. So, if you're new to my channel or you've come across me off TikTok, then you may know I'm a pretty massive fan of Kaguya-Sama Love is War. As a couple of weeks ago, I actually got a tattoo of Kaguya right here. You can't really see it. I'll show you a better image. This one. You can also see Batman. It's honestly a pretty cool tattoo. I really like it. And without a doubt, it's probably one of my favorite romance series. It's probably one of the best I have ever seen and or read. You could very well make the case or the argument that it's honestly one of the best romances ever, as it's pretty interesting, pretty unique. It does things really interesting. But then there's gonna be those of you who say, oh, but it's so generic, other anime have done it much better. Well, yes, but my counter argument to that is, well, there have been plenty of anime that have tackled these subjects similarly. To name a few anime, but to not be limited to, I would have to say Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, My Love Story, Golden Time, Nisekoi, etc. The list goes on. But that's not the focus on today's topic. If you want to watch that, I made a video of it a while back right here. Feel free to go watch it. But with that being said, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it all on what makes Kaguya-Sama the perfect love story. Let's begin. I'm not entirely sure if it was just me, but back in high school, at least here in the United States, we would always read some Shakespeare, specifically the tale of Romeo and Juliet. It's a story/play written by famous poet William Shakespeare back in the late 14th century. I'll be really surprised if you've never heard of the story or of the guy, because he's pretty big. He wrote Hamlet. Everyone must have at least heard of him or the story, but I digress. So, the story is ultimately about love and how it went entirely wrong. It's a tragic story about love gone wrong. If you're not too familiar with it, then let me give you a brief explanation, brief synopsis of this story, because it's really critical that you understand it for this analysis. So the story is ultimately about Romeo Montague and how he falls for Juliet. But ultimately, he cannot be with her due to a rivalry both of their families have. I believe it's called a feud. Later on in the story, Romeo does the unthinkable and unalives himself. And Juliet was faking her sleep because she was gonna run away with him. But when she finds out that he's already, she's desperate, and she also, and that's how the story ends. It ends with love gone wrong. Both lovers, yes. So now you may be asking yourself, how does a play from the 14th century correlate to an analysis about two anime couples? Well, that's where it gets really interesting, so let me explain. In a way, the story of Romeo and Juliet mirrors that of the story of Kaguya and Shirogane, as Kaguya, similar to Juliet, comes from one of the upper echelons of society. She comes from the wealthy nobility in all of Japan, while Miyuko Shirogane is just your average student. He's not really wealthy at all. He's worked really hard to get to where he is right now. His family's not wealthy. He lives in a small, modest apartment with his little sister Kay and his Chad father, Dio. I mean, his father. He's a pretty funny guy. But ultimately what the story revolves around is Kaguya and Shirogane not acknowledging one another's love for each other. So they go to this metaphorical war that involves psychological warfare and mind tricks. And the first one to confess to one another loses and wins the opponent's heart. It's a pretty interesting way to tell a story. And what both stories of Romeo and Juliet and Kaguya and Shirogane show is that ultimately love is near impossible to achieve, if not attain. Kaguya, similar to Juliet, both come from at least what you would consider modern nobility, at least the equivalent of modern nobility, I guess is what you would say in modern times. She's just really wealthy, similar to Juliet. Both share that characteristics. Both were raised on different values, that they are superior to the lower class, and that one was raised to run the family business, while Miyuko Shirogane and Romeo share similar characteristics but different circumstances, as both of them are regarded as young, handsome, intelligent men that are really smart and they know what they want. However, their only goal is to achieve the attention of the one special person that they want. They crave attention from one person and disregard the attention from any others. Both of their circumstances are pretty different, yet they're kind of similar in a way. You know, without the dying part, of course, because that hasn't happened in the story, not even in the manga, I think. Yeah. One could ultimately go as far as to say that the story of Romeo and Juliet in a way gave some inspiration to that of Kaguya-Sama, as both characters have similar traits. Kaguya and Juliet, they're both from the wealthiest parts of their families. Shirogane and Romeo are young, intelligent men. They know what they want. This is what I find most fascinating about Kaguya-Sama. Or maybe I'm just kind of reading too deep into it. However, the story is, the way at least it's developing, made me think back to this play that I read so many years ago, Romeo and Juliet. You know, without the dying part. Wait, they died. Shirogane and Kaguya haven't died. The way both story's central theme and narrative is about love and betrayal and trying to get to a point where they can achieve their goals is pretty fascinating, as they try to overcome these challenges. While Romeo and Juliet may not be one of my favorite stories in general, it's still pretty fascinating and interesting to see how it had some sort of influence developing in these characters, because I can really see the characteristics and the central narrative influencing at least Kaguya-sama. It must have at least had some sort of influence upon these characters, the wealth, the nobility, everything about it. You see a correlation between them, and going forward, this is what I find most interesting. One could almost go as far as to say, very elegant. At this point in the video, you may be thinking to yourself, enough with the subtle historical analysis. I came to see you talk about a love story, Uwu girls, a Kaguya, whatever. Not for you to talk about some 14th century play that no one really cares about. I mean, I guess they want to talk about, but it's pretty important to this narrative. But I digress. I will move on. So, as many of you know, Kaguya-Sama Ultra Romantic Season 3 concluded not too long ago, and right after the season ended, there was an announcement for a film adaptation of The First Kiss Never Ends arc from chapters 142 to 151 of the manga. I'm pretty excited to see that film whenever it releases, and to continue seeing the story of Kaguya and Shirogane develop, and to continue seeing Best Boy Ishigami and where his story goes forward and moves on. But light spoilers for the manga, his story won't end happily. I'm not gonna say anymore because I really don't want to spoil it. This video is not about his arc or past season 3. I just want to talk about season 3, season 2, and season 1. That's all the spoilers I'm gonna say. But yeah, I'm really excited for that film, and let's continue going on with this analysis. Looking back now at from season 1 all the way to the current season of season 3, what I find most interesting about this series is that it feels like nothing has changed. At the same time, it has changed, which is pretty interesting, because what you would think with something like this, it would completely change the narrative, but no, not really. Kaguya-Sama, what it does differently from other stories that are similar is that once something like this happens, it doesn't change its tone or narrative. It keeps the same aspect of the story that made it special from the previous seasons and includes it in the current iteration and builds upon it. We get to see the characters evolve yet not evolve at the same time. This is what I find most fascinating, as you have the balance between comedy, darkness, and everything that made this series special continues to build upon it. It's really fascinating. While the main story is on Kaguya and Shirogane, what it does perfectly is that it gives shine to lesser known characters and the rest of the cast, such as Best Boy Ishigami, and how he went from this sad loner loser to this extroverted loner loser, and how he unintentionally, stupidly confesses love to, I forgot her name, but to her. And this is only the beginning of his arc. I don't really want to spoil because, like Anakin said,
this is where the fun begins.
what most rom-coms often tend to forget is to balance out the characters and give spotlight and character development to the lesser cast, to everyone else in the story. This is what Kaguya-Sama does pretty ingenious and pretty interesting compared to other stories that I have read and or seen that just kind of throws away the character, does something with them one episode and then never again. What Kaguya-Sama does really differently is if a character has a weakness or a problem, it uses that weakness or benefit to benefit the main cast, the main couple, to help motivate the protagonists into bettering themselves and to see what they can learn from these issues to help with their own issues. For example, the couple Tsubasa and Nagisa often have some problems all the way back from season 1 to season 3. They either go to Shirogane or Kaguya, either side, and usually they end up solving the problem and they take the advice of the current problem and they put it to use with their own problems. They see what happens with them and they learn from it and try to use or exploit that benefit for themselves. Often it will work, often it will not work, and respectively the both sides, they do what they can to benefit one another, and it's pretty interesting. Also, what I find really interesting is when Hayasaka first meets Shirogane, she ends up going on fake dates with him just to spy on him for Kaguya, but eventually they learn to trust one another. This shows character development from season 1 all the way to season 3, how they ended up not really trusting one another to now being the sole focus of like the friendship. It's really interesting. For example, in season 3 episode 5, where they have that rap battle, which is a big misunderstanding that involves Hayasaka, Chika, and Shirogane as, let me remember back. So Kaguya finds out that Shirogane likes someone and Shirogane says, I forgot the fake identity of Hayasaka, and Kaguya thinks, oh, he really likes someone. So they do this crazy rap battle with Chika, and it's really, really funny. You may think it's a pointless episode, but it's actually beneficial to progressing the story of Kaguya and Shirogane, understanding their misunderstandings and help develop and see, oh, Shirogane can do this. He doesn't really like someone. He's just friends with this person. It's just a misunderstanding on my part. No matter how insignificant or how hilarious an episode like that may be, everything always has a reason. It helps develop the plot even further. No matter how insignificant someone may be, they always have some use in this series, and it helps develop the main narrative and shift it and continue moving it forward without diluting or feeling like it's meaningless or feeling like filler. This is what I find most brilliant about Kaguya-Sama. It doesn't like throw away any of the characters compared to other series where it just uses them and then throws them aside and never talks about them again. But I digress. To me, the very first episode of Kaguya-Sama will always go down as one of the most memorable and eye-catching of me. No other series has ever caught the attention of me so fast or got me so hooked onto it really quickly. What the very first episode of Kaguya-Sama does, the very few seconds it has for an introduction, it sets the tone and narrative of this series, and it states specifically by the narrator that after falling in love, that's not where the story ends. That's only just the beginning of the relationship, because you have questions like who holds the power in the relationship and the friendship. What happens next? What is gonna happen? What are we supposed to do afterwards? This is what I really like about the beginning of the first episode and how it set the tone for everything that is to come. As the very first episode, we see Kaguya and Shirogane be introduced. We see them as the ones in the student council. Everyone looks up to them. They're the hierarchy of power, similar to Black Adam when he said we're the hierarchy of power. But they are the top of this school, and everyone just assumes that they are dating because they must be spending so much time with one another. Both of them deny this, but deep in their thoughts they say, yes, it's true, I like him, I like her, but I don't know how to admit it. And this is where the fun begins, like Anakin says.
This is where the fun begins.
As the story progresses, and with each new episode, with each new season, we start to see the inclusion of more and more characters being added to the roster, but it never shies away from the main couple. Yes, it gives shine to some of the other side characters, but it never redirects focus from the main couple and the main narrative. It doesn't really do that from this would-be couple waging this so-called pseudo-psychological love warfare against one another. Honestly, for me, it's a very heartwarming and touching series just to see love blossom between these characters and to see their antics and their gimmicks to what they are up to. While they are still young and make mistakes, they often learn from them. Not Chica. But what's impressive about this series is that, just like our real world, they start to mature gradually with time and they start to learn from their mistakes. It's pretty relatable. To me, Kaguya-Sama is probably one of the most relatable anime and has some of the most realistic settings, as I personally have seen couples act like the way Kaguya and Shirogane do. I have seen characters like Ishigami in real life. I've seen characters like Chika, because I've seen personifications of all these characters back when I was in high school. You and me probably like someone back in high school. We either confessed to someone, either got rejected, whatever you want to say. For me, it's just really relatable, as some of the characters share similar traits to people I have seen in real life. And best boy Ishigami, he's probably one of the best characters for me, as he's one of the most touching and relatable. Almost anyone can relate to him. If you're an introverted otaku loser, I don't want to say I'm a loser, but I don't want to say I'm a loser, but the way Kaguya and Shirogane have an obsession for one another, it's similar to what I saw back in high school. I don't really want to discuss what I saw in high school, because I would see all these couples doing these weird stuff, and it just kind of grossed me out, me being like this dude who didn't really care about that. It has some of the most realistic portrayals of teenage love, and this is what I find most interesting. And to this I say, love will prevail. Retrospectively, I can assure you that Kaguya-Sama will go down as the modern equivalent of Romeo and Juliet of this era, or at least in anime culture for years to come. It's probably going to be a cult classic, maybe 10 to 50 years from now. It'll be the equivalent of what Dragon Ball Z was to modern shonen of this era. Kaguya-Sama will be the modern staple of romances to come for years and years to come, at least in my personal opinion. I really adore this series. It's really heartwarming. It's made me cry. It's made me laugh. It's made me want to confess my love to that special person, if I had someone like that.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
But this series has been building up for years to the confession to Kaguya and Shirogane without actually being a confession, as none of them actually confessed to one another. They just kissed, leaving it rather pretty open-ended. And to this I say, it's pretty good. I really like that they didn't confess to one another, leaving it just open-ended to see what happens going forward, as it's gonna leave everything fresh and new, and it's not gonna really shift the narrative or tone. It feels like it might, or it should, but at the same time it's not really gonna shift the tone, but it is going to create a new environment and different challenges for the characters to overcome, and I really don't mind that, because I find it really exciting. It's a fresh take on the romance aspect. This is what I adore about Kaguya, that it doesn't change anything, but yet at the same time it does change, and it leaves us with questions like, will Kaguya start today's Shirogane? Will Ishigami get a happy ending? Will Chika ever stop being dumb? Probably not. And this is ultimately why I say Kaguya-Sama is the perfect love story. Whew. Whew. Oh, so hey guys, so if you enjoyed that video analysis, let me know what you thought down below in the comments. This is a video I've been wanting to do ever since the end of season 3. I wanted to do it before, but I wanted to wait till the end of season 3 just to collect my thoughts and do this analysis. It took me a lot of research and time and effort into doing this, so if you could leave a like or comment your thoughts on it, and if you want to leave a request for any other video in the future, be sure to let me know. And if you saw some glare in my eye, I was just reading off a script because I wrote down some notes. I tried my best to memorize it because a lot of you said I should do a script, and I took your advice, and I hope this video came out to your standards. I really like the way I formatted this. I will do better next time. I'm gonna have a better mic. I'm planning on getting a better camera. But with that being said, let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed this video, like down below, and I'll see you guys on my next one. Peace.